Well, it's 2 minutes after, and want to thank all of you for taking the time to jump on this. As I was telling Ellen, um, while we were waiting for everybody to join, I've gotten a good number of emails about this topic for people that couldn't participate today but have great interest in it. Um, my name is Jill Cizek. I'm Associate Vice President for Research Administration and Finance for the Health Science School. So I work directly with Dr. Brashear, not situated specifically in the Jacobs School, but actually supporting all of the health science research schools when it comes to especially large and complex proposals. And the group that I work with is very talented, and that's the space that we're situated in, working on things like PCORIs or NIHP awards and training grants, which is definitely more complex than large, but it checks a category of the support that we're aiming to provide. So originally, when we conceived of this, the office that I'm situated in, when we are working with investigators who are going after significant resources or very prestigious submissions and award opportunities, we try and be as supportive as possible in from the origination of an LOI till a full proposal goes out the door. And we do that in a number of different ways. We have support for editing. We help prepare bio sketches. We chase down letters of support. We write a lot of letters of support and then send them out for approval. But one of the things that we've done over the course of the last year and a half is to bring Ellen Stay, who I have worked with for probably more than 10 years now, who is a very talented designer in our community here in Buffalo, who does contract work with us, not only just in the office that I'm situated in, but also for the Jacobs School. So you'll see a lot of her creative content coming out of the Jacobs School magazine that's produced. She's extremely talented, and she's been extremely effective in, over the course of the last 10 years, really helping us to develop good visual materials to communicate some of the work that all of you do, which is extremely complex. I understand that sometimes there are even challenges communicating concepts or different proposal elements even to others in the scientific community, because everybody has extremely unique expertise. So Ellen has helped us as we've gone through this, and a lot of times we've come to her and said, we're working on a proposal. It would be great to represent an organizational chart or the synergies between different core elements of a submission or the synergies between different core groups within a submission. A lot of times investigators have come to us with visuals that they've attempted to produce in PowerPoint, which is great as a good starting point, but we're usually, they send us things and we start from, and what we get back from Ellen are drastically different. And I'm saying from the perspective that they're visually improved and cleaner looking, and then there's consistency from a visual imagery standpoint throughout the proposal, and it doesn't look like things are just one-off. And so she helps us with making sure that anything that we're putting out the door looks more sophisticated and more cohesive, especially in some of the large and complex proposals, if it's coming from larger groups of, from teams, because everybody, a community engagement team might be producing one visual element and then the research team's another. So with that said, we've been very fortunate to work with her. She was kind enough actually to prepare a PowerPoint presentation or a slide deck that I'm going to share right now. And Ellen, I just want to say thank you not only for taking the time to do this, for everything that you've done to support us in this regard, because you have definitely upped our game when it comes to how we communicate with funders. So that said, I will stop speaking and then you direct me on what you'd like me to do.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to look at this today. Everything, Jill summed it up nicely, what my relationship has been with the university and the kind of work that I do. I will just add that, I'm a graphic designer and my husband here works with me also, and he's an illustrator. And most of the work for the university I do on my own, but every now and then if something requires custom illustration, I'll pull him in and we'll team up on a solution. He's really good conceptual thinker, so really helps us to sometimes come up with solid ways to represent complex ideas in a simple way. So you can go ahead and advance, Jill. I broke this down into different types of graphics that we create and the different roles that they play. But overall, the point is just that if the graphics are really professional looking, it reinforces the science and it helps people to understand the research project more quickly, remember it, and also appreciate its feasibility and significance. And it also, I think, lends a lot of credibility when the graphics are solid. So you can
Yep,
advance. Yep,
just checking.
it's okay. So this first type that we're talking about is like the concept figure, where we try to lay out the overall idea of the work. And this is an example that we did for a proposal that was working on using AI to consolidate lots of different data sources and ultimately produce treatment plans for patients. So that was one where I teamed up with my husband and we brainstormed some different ideas and ran them by the researcher. And eventually, all together, we came up with this solution, which we felt was pretty clear and help to just get the idea right out there right up front. So then everything else that they look at when they start getting down into the technical details, they already have this framework in their mind of what it is that the project's all about. You can go next. And then this is just another example of that sort of a thing. In this case, the idea was that opioid treatment programs and often the HCV treatment were done in separate locations, and there were all these obstacles between them, which made it difficult for patients to receive their treatment. And so the HCV cure rate was pretty low. But what this was aiming to do was to solve this so that the treatment happens in the treatment and the program administration and everything happen in the same location. So it just eliminates those obstacles, and then the HCV cure rate is much higher. So this just helped to tell the story, set the tone for what it was that they were doing. You can go on. So then we also have workflow diagrams. A lot of time is necessary to explain what the process is going to be for the project. And there's different ways to illustrate that depending on your content. Another one, this one's a little more complex. It's nice to be able to do these custom things because everyone is different. The requirements for everyone are always different.
Can I chime in here for a second, Ellen, on this one in particular?
Sure.
So this was actually done for a PCORI submission. And the one thing that I'll say also from the advantage of being supportive in the research space for our investigators within all of the health science schools. Yes, could an investigator sit down and via PowerPoint craft this all out, resize, align colors and everything? Yes, absolutely. Would it look probably as polished? I would say usually no. But I also think from the vantage that we're situated in, it's not highest and best use of a faculty member's time. Ellen can do this and she understands these visuals and the software so well that having a PI sit down when they can actually be writing up their research elements and their research sections, that's far more better investment of the time that they're spending. So just from the perspective that we're looking at it.
And then a couple more of these kind of process flow diagrams. Timelines are always a big item. This one was a little bit complex, kind of small in scale, but somewhat complex, and a lot of different types of information in there that needed to read clearly. And this one was more complex as well. But again, custom solutions for each particular one.
Oh,
Maps are frequently needed.
yeah, this is, yeah.
Did you want to say something about that, Jill?
No, I'll let you explain, but these have been extremely impactful, I think, in some of the submissions that we put out the door.
Yeah. Um, yeah, again, it's just a picture, a quick picture that can explain so much at a glance as to where resources are, um, where populations are, whatever the relevant data. Just another example of that. Charts and graphs. Um, it's nice to have them consistent and clear and clean for obvious reasons, but sometimes PowerPoint just doesn't cut it. Here's a more complex one. Um, Sometimes it's an org chart. You can also do pie charts and line graphs and all that kind of thing. And then these things I kind of categorized as conceptual frameworks. A lot of times there's a need to discuss how the different components of the team are going to work together or what the particular values are of the team around the goal of the project. So we try to show relationships with things like this. And there's a few more after that. Yeah. Simple but clean, and they look professional and legit. That's it.
Yeah. So, Ellen, obviously, she provided you examples of things that she has done in collaboration with investigators here. Um, some of the stuff that I'll mention and then I'll ask her a couple of questions. Um, One of the things that we're always watching for, and sh because of her talents and her skill set, and because of the things that we see when we're supporting larger submissions, is a recognition of the continuity of the imagery throughout, making sure that things are appropriately sized. Sometimes when you're working with different groups of people, I've seen things come together. People have done a nice job of putting together a visual or something like that. But it's inconsistent fonts throughout. And then so you're going from page 6 to page 7 and a font has changed or a point size has changed and the lack of consistency. I think it's just not as polished as we would like to see things going out the door, especially if we have access to talent. So, Ellen, do you want to talk a little bit about how, because I think PCORI is a perfect example, the groups that you've worked with, we've actually asked you for org charts, maps, and diagrams all in the same publication or in the same proposal that we're putting out. So how do you try and get the color schemes to mirror and that sort of thing? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah, that's important. Um, and having the graphic software just makes all the difference that you're able to maintain type styles and sizes, colors, graphic treatments, whether it's drop shadows or whatever, so that everything looks cohesive and holds together visually.
We've also asked Ellen, and she's very cognizant of the fact that when we're doing this, we know that your page limitations are
Yeah.
always a concern. So she has, from her perspective, when it comes to assisting investigators, especially in competitive submissions, um, developing an understanding of not taking up too much real estate on the page. And that could be everything from, how do we make something thin, wide, but short to not take up too much space on the page. Trimming out borders and things like that, that's always something that's a factor and that Ellen pays very close attention to. Do you want to mention any of that, like how you've sort of manipulated images so that we're not like taking up half of a page?
Yeah, that's a good point. We often do have to do that. And sometimes we have to retrofit things that, because as the proposals evolve, space needs change. And so something that maybe was set up to be, fit in a vertical space then has to swap around to fit in a horizontal space. So just being responsive to how these things evolve is also have been important because it's not necessarily always a super linear process because a lot of people involved and things develop and you might reconsider something that's already previously been done. So just being flexible and responsive to all of that is also an important part of this type of work.
So I think, can we just talk a little bit? Well, let's talk about process. So when our office has engaged with you, it's usually because we're working on a major submission that needs to go out the door. And usually for something that's bigger, we have a timeline of 8 to 10 weeks in order to pull something together. So what our office will initially do is reach out to Ellen and say, we've got something that we're going to be working on, and at least give her a heads up that we've got a major submission coming through. What we found that does work and what does not work. What works is that if investigators have an idea up front of visuals that they would like to include, that's the best place to start. If they have something like that, or even if they've actually mocked something up, Ellen's taken something that they've created on their own and improved upon it significantly, usually by recreating it in better softwares. But that's the best way to handle it with enough time frame. What has not worked is the fact that when you're working with Ellen or you're working with another designer at the university or across, whoever might be a resource for you, is asking them to do things that are not part of their skill set, sending them data sets to interpret and say, how can I represent this? We're working with a group of people that are extremely talented in one area, but it's not their job to interpret the science. And so that's where we've kind of occasionally hit a speed bump or two and had to explain that everything needs to be pretty succinct in what's coming
Yeah.
across. Ellen, do you want to comment on that? Like what works best for you?
We usually, the way the work comes to me is that someone has already taken a crack at it, because I think just going through their own thought process, they want to see it and kind of map it out and just decide how they want to represent things. So a lot of times it's a matter of taking those and then cleaning them up, or else they might come to me and say, we don't have any idea how to represent this. And we'll have a Zoom and they'll explain what it is that they're trying to communicate. Like those first couple of diagrams and the PowerPoint are a good example of those. Like how do we represent the idea of, multiple data sets being distilled down through AI to ultimately result in a patient treatment plan. So, we'll usually have some face-to-face meetings and we'll develop a couple of different ideas of how to approach it. And then I'll show rough sketches to the client and get their feedback. And then we'll work together to refine it and decide on a direction. A few times, as you said, Jill, sometimes the request just doesn't fit my skill set, but that doesn't come up too often, but occasionally.
It's not your skill set. It's just that it's better explanations of exactly what people are imagining in their head, and an explanation of the science just streamlines the process so that we're not going back and forth a number of times. Because when we do work with Ellen, I would say that, usually where we start and then where we finish with you, there are modifications
Oh, yeah.
as a proposal evolves and changes that are made, but it just can't be, turning something upside down because it wasn't explained well at the onset.
Right.
Dr. Bass just made she put a comment in the chat, and it's actually a good one. And Ellen, you can answer this for me because I don't recall us ever having done this, but she said NIH forbids use of AI generation in figures within proposals. But anything that we've ever done with you, you're creating for us
Yeah.
without any sort of AI element, correct?
I think you broke up a little bit, but we create everything from scratch. We don't use AI. I've tried it a couple of times to generate images and I've found it pretty unsatisfactory, but I have not tried BioRender. Um, so lack of control over the IP in the figure, and also, yeah, we don't use any AI whatsoever. My husband's an illustrator, and we just work completely in kind of the old school way of just talking about ideas and sketching them out, and now fleshing them out um, with our clients. So I can't speak specifically to BioRender, but ChatGPT I've tried using for visuals and have not found it very satisfactory and definitely not like visually consistent with that's the nice thing about doing everything custom and with graphic software. You can make everything consistent throughout your whole proposal, which is important.
Does anybody else have questions on the call? The way that we've worked with Ellen is that we've basically been the point of contact. Our office has been the point of contact to access her. She is not part of the university at the moment. So we contract out with her on a project basis. And her, she's juggling a number of other clients, but she's also been extremely responsive to us. And as long as we give her, as like I mentioned earlier, a good heads up about what might be coming up in the next few weeks or the next month or two. We've always hit deadlines, and I can say that investigators have always been extremely appreciative of the way that it has basically polished and professionalized some of their proposals from a visual element. So, Ellen, is there anything else that I'm forgetting? Karen Ventrella, how about you? Is there something that I've missed?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Do we need to talk about billing or the way that works at all, or does that just go through your office, Jill?
We would basically do it on a case by case with the investigators. I mean, the work that we're doing right now is built into our budget when it comes to large and complex proposals. But if investigators need support, we can direct them to you and figure out how that works coming from the particular school that they're situated in.
Okay.
So. Well, I would encourage each of you. Have any of you ever? Let me just throw this out there. Have any of you ever? Are all of you doing your own visuals right now, or is anybody else working with a professional in the space when you're creating? I guess that everybody's probably doing their own at this point. Yeah.
Oh, there's some answers.
We, Jack Sullivan here. I do most of my illustrations, exporting graphics out of a program called Origin. And you can export, dot matrix or vector graphics. I use Adobe Illustrator to build up, vector-based graphics for grants. In ophthalmology, we have some contract with BioRender. So some of us are using BioRender now. And it has a lot of preformed motifs that you might be able to use and extract and it can export PDF, so you could bring that into Adobe Illustrator as well and do further manipulation. So this is what I've been using for years now with the BioRender, just an additional flavor. So, but it's kind of old school, not using anything on AI for that. So.
I see.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I think if an opportunity presents itself, I would encourage you to reach out to our team. Even though we're working on, a very specific subset of submissions, we are here to be supportive of investigators in as many ways as we possibly can. Ellen is a tremendous resource that we've found. I really do know that typically where we've started with things that we've sent her way and where we finish and send something out the door is something that I'm pretty proud of because of the work that she's done, because it's upped our game. So please feel free to reach out to our office if anybody has any questions and would like any recommendations or to be put in touch with Ellen. I'm happy to do that. So thanks to everybody for jumping on today. And the video, I know for those of you that wanted to share it with colleagues or somebody else on your team, will be posted on our YouTube channel probably by Monday. So thank you, Ellen, for everything that you've done for us, truly, and the great examples.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks to everyone.